Welcome to the Creative Commons RX podcast. Before diving into this episode, I want to ensure we're all on the same page. This is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient or pharmacist-patient relationship is formed. Using this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's risk. The content on this podcast is not intended to substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Clinical experts created the references, content, and clinical insight. NotebookLM, a Google AI tool, created the audio content, which I extensively reviewed before release. Finally, the host states that he takes all conflicts of interest seriously. Currently, there are no conflicts to disclose. For all of his disclosures and the companies he invests in or advises, he directs users to reach out independently, where he keeps an up-to-date and active list of all disclosures.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something really serious, caustic ingestions. We're talking about a hidden danger that could be lurking in your home right now, and how what looks like a simple cleaning product can actually cause a life-altering injury. And the answer? Well, it might actually surprise you. You know, we're all taught to worry about sharp things or obvious poisons, but the reality is a lot of very common household products have these incredibly powerful chemicals inside them called caustics. So what exactly is a caustic agent? Well, think of it this way. It's any substance that can chemically destroy your body's tissue the second it makes contact. We're talking about sensitive spots like the inside of your mouth, your throat, your esophagus. Okay, so where are these things, these hidden dangers? Let's take that definition and connect it to stuff you probably have under a sink or in a cabinet right now. Take drain cleaners, for instance. Some of the crystal ones can be up to 74% lye. That's sodium hydroxide. I mean, that is an unbelievably powerful alkali. Its whole job is to dissolve tough organic gunk in your pipes. And guess what? It does the exact same thing to human tissue. And this is a big one, especially if you have kids. Laundry pods. They are a huge concern. Why? Because that concentrated gel inside, it's sticky. It clings to tissue, which means the chemical just sits there, burning for longer and causing a much more severe injury. And you know, it's not just the alkaline stuff like lye. You've got to watch out for the strong acids too. Think about some toilet bowl cleaners. They can have up to 26% hydrochloric acid. That is just as capable of causing an absolutely devastating injury. All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. What is actually happening inside the body if someone swallows one of these things? It's not just a simple burn, not at all. It's more like a chemical war being waged on your cells. This is fascinating, really. There are two totally different ways these chemicals attack. On one side, you have acids. They cause something called coagulation necrosis. Basically, they create a hard, scab-like shield that, in some cases, can actually limit how deep the burn penetrates. But then you have alkalis, and they are a different beast entirely. They cause liquefaction necrosis. They literally turn fats and proteins into liquid soap, allowing the chemical to just melt deeper and deeper into the tissue. This is why they often cause much, much worse damage. And the injury isn't a one-and-done event. It actually evolves over time. After that initial burn, you enter this really critical window, from about day 2 to day 14. This is when the dead tissue starts to peel away, or slough off. And during that phase, the wall of the esophagus is at its absolute weakest. This is super dangerous because it means a delayed perforation, a life-threatening tear, is a very, very real possibility. Okay, let's talk about what to look for. How would you even know if an ingestion has happened? Sometimes the signs are screamingly obvious, but other times they can be dangerously subtle. Right away, you might see some really dramatic signs. We're talking severe pain, lots of drooling, trouble swallowing. But listen up, because this is crucial. If you see any signs of airway trouble, like a hoarse voice, wheezing, or something called stridor, which is this high-pitched sound when they breathe, that is a full-blown, time-critical emergency. The airway can swell shut in minutes. And this right here is probably one of the most important takeaways. A person, especially a little kid, can look totally fine, no burns in the mouth, no obvious pain, and yet they could have catastrophic, life-threatening damage happening inside their esophagus or stomach. You absolutely cannot judge the book by its cover in this situation. Okay, so this brings us to what might be the most critical, need-to-know part of this entire explainer. What you should do, and more importantly, what you should never do while you're waiting for help to arrive. Okay, pay close attention here. A lot of the things you might think you should do are actually the exact wrong things, and they can make everything so much worse. Don't make them vomit, that just burns the esophagus all over again on the way back up. Don't give them charcoal, it's useless for caustics, and whatever you do, don't try to neutralize it. All that does is create a chemical reaction that produces heat, which adds a nasty heat burn on top of the chemical burn. Seriously, the only thing you should do is call for help immediately. So once the person is in the ER and in the hands of professionals, the first job is, of course, to get them stable. But right after that, doctors need to figure out just how bad the damage is on the inside. And how do they do that? Well, the gold standard is a procedure called an EGD. It's basically a very thin, flexible tube with a tiny camera on the end. They guide it down the throat so they can literally see the inside of the esophagus and stomach and get a direct look at the burn. What they see is then graded on something called the Zargar classification scale. And look at this table. The key thing to see here is how the risk of forming a debilitating scar, that's called a stricture, just skyrockets. Once you get to a grade 2B injury, where the ulcer goes all the way around, the risk jumps to 75%. And for grade 3, with that dead, blackened tissue, it's pretty much a guarantee. Now, for someone who survives a really severe ingestion, the battle is often just beginning. The initial injury can set off a chain reaction of lifelong medical problems. And the most common complication by far is the one we just mentioned, esophageal strictures. This is where scar tissue builds up and tightens, narrowing the esophagus. It can make something as simple as eating or drinking incredibly difficult and painful. And the treatment often means repeated, painful procedures to stretch that scar tissue open, sometimes for the rest of their life. And then there's this. This is probably the most sobering long-term risk of all. A severe caustic burn increases the person's lifetime risk of developing esophageal cancer by 1,000 times. 1,000. And often, that cancer doesn't show up for decades after the initial injury. So that leaves us with one final question, right? When you see the kind of devastating consequences we've been talking about, it becomes crystal clear that prevention is the only real cure here. So the question to ask yourself is, what steps can you take right now to make your own home safer?
This is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient or pharmacist-patient relationship is formed. Using this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's risk. The content on this podcast is not intended to substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Clinical experts created the references, content, and clinical insight. NotebookLM, a Google AI tool, created the audio content, which I extensively reviewed before release. Finally, the host states that he takes all conflicts of interest seriously. Currently, there are no conflicts to disclose. For all of his disclosures and the companies he invests in or advises, he directs users to reach out independently, where he keeps an up-to-date and active list of all disclosures.